Welcome to another resource for living life with wisdom, purpose, and faith. Brought to you by Shepherd's Heart Ministries. Shepherd's Heart is a 501c3 evangelical nonprofit located in Bozeman, Montana. Join us for one of our many events in the Gallatin Valley as we seek the lost, strengthen the found, and together shine more brightly for Jesus. And now, on to today's resource.
We started After Hours back in September, and it's a chance to get to meet some other people, and for all of us to recognize that we're humans on a journey, and we're trying to improve. So that's something that is marked by this place, is trying to improve our own integrity. Living life with purpose and integrity is our tagline. But even more important to that, or what undergirds all of that, is looking into the Bible, which are what those books are on your table there. So some of the guys who come to this have never opened a Bible, and that's okay. That's why this exists, is to try to introduce the Bible to some people and talk about the God of the Bible and His Son Jesus, because that book has shaped history. And it's shaped our lives, and it's amazing. So anyways, that's what we're going to do today. But we don't expect that you just join us in our faith in one conversation. And so if you have questions, if you have doubts, if you have criticisms of Christianity or the Bible, that's okay too. So this is a place, an open forum to discuss at your tables tonight. And so let's just respect everyone's where they're coming from, and that we're all different. I'm going to introduce my dad. This is my dad. His name's Doug. You've already heard from him, and he's going to share some things tonight from one of the main characters in the New Testament, the Apostle or Saint Peter. So would you just give a round of applause for my dad?
It's our pleasure to meet with you. Got some ground that we're going to try to cover tonight. I want to start by just saying how much I value the relationships in here, especially with you, some of you younger guys. It's something that I don't take for granted. I appreciate it, and there's probably really no way for me to express what you young men mean to probably a lot of guys that are my age. But I was in City Brew a couple days ago, and I was just sitting there reading through some of these verses, and right over here there was two guys sitting at a table, and they were just getting along famously, and I felt like one of the guys, and I'm guessing they were probably late 20s, early 30s. One of the guys was, I believe, having an issue with a girlfriend. I don't know if he was going to break up with her. I don't know, but I tried not to listen, but I mean, they're literally from me to there, and of course I kind of fell off my stool as he got into the gory details, but honestly, I wasn't trying to hear. I was just hoping I would hear the word pray about it or get God involved or something like that. I was hoping that I would hear something along those lines. But regardless of that, it reminded me of a time, because these guys they were buddies. And the one guy really was empathizing with the other one, and I felt that it looked at, by all appearances, that they were making a lot of progress, and that they would spend many years as good friends, And it made me think back of those early days in my life when my wife and I were getting engaged. Of course, it would have been earlier than that because we were really young when we got married. And then all of those friendships that I had with my buddies in those days, a lot of them got married, and we were in each other's weddings, and just that whole thing. It was a great time of life. And so when I was in City Brew the other day, and those two guys were talking, I was short on time. I really wanted to jump in and say, hey, I wanted to invite them to After Hours. And normally I'd do that because I'm not shy about that stuff. But I didn't feel the Holy Spirit leading me to do that. And then I got a text message from Trent Dilfer. Raise your hand, Trent. Yesterday, and he said, hey, Doug, when's After Hours and all that, because I can make it this month. Trent's a realtor, does a good job. And that has meant a lot to me, something simple like that is, hey, I want in. I just want to know a little bit more about God. I want to pursue the King of Kings, the Creator. And so, that text, Trent, simple thing like that, it did something to me because I thought, wow, if everybody could just have that interest and that openness to want to know more about the God of the universe. And so, that's kind of what I just wanted to lead in with. I appreciate you, young men. How many guys here, their wives have gone to Words for Wives or girlfriends at one point or another? Raise them high. I want to see that. So that's good. It always intrigues me that there's a good balance there between this group and that group. And when we have bigger space, we're going to mix it up every once in a while, get everybody together. So that'd be kind of fun. And then for your wives that don't go to that, you can bring them. What we're going to do here tonight is we're going to go to Peter, but we're going to look at about 8 or 10 verses. And I'm going to have each table take a verse or maybe two and discuss it on your own. And then we're going to come back and talk about it as a group. It'll be a little different tonight. But what I want to emphasize is kind of what Daniel said earlier is, we're all on a journey. We don't have it figured out. You don't have all the answers. So what? If you took the wisest person on earth, the most deepest spiritual person on the planet, that guy don't know the answers. And probably got half of them wrong and thinks he's got them right. So it's all about trust and faith and taking those small steps to go on your journey. So as we look at these verses, Daniel's got them numbered. There's 12 verses here. And we got 10 tables or what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're gonna have a couple tables take some extra verses because I want to go through here. I can catch all these verses. So in Luke 5, this is where Jesus calls Peter. And the reason it says here, he sees his shame next to the Holy One. Jesus grabs a boat. He's got all these people following him around because of all the miracles he's been doing. Takes the boat just offshore and starts teaching. But one of the things he did in that conversation, he says, hey, you guys, this is how you should fish, try it over here. And Peter, of course, pipes up and says, we've been fishing all night. Kind of like, I don't know if it was a disrespectful or what, but he said, not worth it. But they did it and filled their nets. And when Peter realizes that is maybe the Holy One, his response to that was like of guilt and shame. He just didn't feel good enough to be in his presence. So we're going to talk about that. Then another time in Matthew 14, the Lord, they're out in the water and they're going from one side of the lake to the other. Well, Jesus had not gotten in the boat with the guys, and now he comes walking to them on the water. Well, Peter being Peter says, hey, if that's you, Lord, I want to do that. Tell me to come. And so he walks out there. You may know that story. He had the faith. He believed that Jesus was who he said he was. But somewhere out there his faith wavered and he fell in the water, and Jesus said, why did you doubt? And then we're going to talk about in Matthew 16 where Jesus says, who do you say that I am? First he says, who do the people say that I am? He asked his disciples. And then he asked Peter, who do you say that I am? I want to know, who do you think I am? Am I the Messiah or not? In your mind, are you there yet? And this wonderful confession of Christ comes back from Peter, and it's a special moment. Matthew 16, Jesus predicts his death. What's going to happen? He's going to die. He's going to rise again in 3 days. Peter loves Jesus. He said, no, we're not going to let that happen. You can't do that. And when he did that, Peter said, you still don't get it. I've been telling you guys that I'm going to have to die for mankind. And he said, if you don't get out of my way, you really can't be on this team. Because where we're going is a pretty deep place. And I need you to believe in this. And so, and then in Matthew 17, the transfiguration. It's called the transfiguration because as Jesus goes up on the mountain, he takes his inner circle and he takes Peter and John, three guys, and he goes up on the mountain and he says, and they have a meeting with God. And I'm going to let you guys read that one to us, but that story is kind of a crack up. Peter, it's just nervous energy, and he starts talking and wanting to build altars and shelters and stuff. And then this cloud envelops him, and the presence of God envelops him. And that's where God says, hey, this is my beloved son. And then he almost yells it feels like, listen to him. So good old Peter, nervous energy, I don't know what, but he's being Peter. And the goal tonight is for us to see our own characteristics in some of the things of Peter. Our nature to control, the anxiety that we might have, the nervousness, the take charge thing, not trusting God, things like that. And then, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? He said, up to 7 times. And then Jesus, of course, says, no, how about 70 times 7? In other words, don't ever stop forgiving. That's a good place to be. But that's Peter. He just wants to know the answer. He's trying to get to the bottom of it. And then in John 13, Jesus was washing the disciples' feet. So Jesus essentially took on the position of a slave, puts a tunic around him, gets down on his hands and feet, and washes the most dirty part of the human body, just like they would have slaves do in those days. So he comes to Peter. Peter says, you can't wash my feet. You're going to wash my feet? He said, you're never going to wash my feet because you are God, And so Jesus rebukes him, says, you can't have any part of my kingdom then. If I can't serve you, you can't be a part of my kingdom. And so much like Peter, he says, well, then wash all of me. From the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, you can just wash me and make me clean. And that humility is what every one of us has defined to follow God. You cannot make a decision to follow Christ in the simplest form if you're too proud to say, Lord, I'm going to open up my life to you. I need you. I need guidance. I need help. I want to be committed. But there's a piece of humility that has to be there. And it was there for every one of you that ever made that decision. And pride keeps us away from that because we got this image or, we've got 100 different things going on. But it's an identity thing. I was talking to Sam a minute ago, and it's like, wow, what's your identity in? Is it in Jesus? Or is it in your big truck with the big wheels? Don't mean to be too sarcastic, but there's a zillion things that'll come and steal our attention. And then we'll get so obsessed with that thing that's kind of our identity. Our job, ooh, yeah, I work here, I work there. It's fun, I like it. I like the guys I'm with, the team that we have. Does your identity begin and end at work? Or maybe it's your wife. And who knows? It could be your family. But how about Jesus Christ? Because that's the one that laid down his life and is mapping out eternity. And then in Matthew 26, you will fall away. You're all going to fall away from me tonight. This is coming up on the Garden of Gethsemane. Peter says, they all might fall away. I love that. He points at all of his buddies. They might fall away. I'm not falling away. I'm with you. I will never fall away. And Jesus then says, well, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows in the morning. So that's just Peter. He's doing his thing. Then he falls asleep in the garden when Jesus asked him to pray. And when Jesus comes back, the toughest night of Jesus' life, he's about to be arrested. And he says, not to all the disciples, and he's talking to all of them, but he calls out Peter. Jesus was counting on Peter. He's going to build his church on him. You're sleeping? So you can kind of I'm just trying to give you a snapshot of Peter, right? In the humanness of this guy. And and then it was Peter. I love that in Mark 14:54. He gets arrested. They haul him off with Caiaphas and all the chief priests, the Pharisees and all that, and they are about to, they're out for blood. They're going to kill this Jesus. I don't know where all the other disciples went, but Peter kind of gets in the entourage. Kind of like that guy that stole Tom Brady's Super Bowl jersey. He just kind of waffed in there, and thinks he can get away with that. But he shows a little bit of courage. But he's in the fringe there of that kangaroo court, and then they spot him, and of course he does deny Jesus before the morning. And finally, in John 21, one of my favorite stories, when they see Jesus out, they're all out fishing again. And I'll let you guys read that one. But when John says, hey, it's Jesus, Peter's the one that doesn't waste a second, man. He just, grabs his robe, puts it on so he's at least somewhat decent when he gets to shore and swims to shore. And I'd love to know what that reunion would have been like. What a deal that was. So let's just go around the room. So if you would take verse number 1, and if you would be so kind as to actually open these Bibles and let's dig into them. Let's learn some stuff. Trent, if your table would do number 1, and Zach, if you guys would do verse number 2, Derek, you guys go with verse number 3, and then back there in the back, okay? So that's number 4. And John, you guys would be number 5, verse number 5. You guys would be 6. Aaron, you guys are 7. Jacob, you guys would be 9. And then Elijah, you guys would be 10. And somebody else take... I missed you? Okay, so what number am I, 11? I don't add up. Did I miss a number? Okay, call out your numbers. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're 10. And then who wants to do 11? Anybody else want to do number 11? Somebody take 11 for me. Okay, they're going to do 1 and 11, and I need somebody to do 12. You'll do 12. Okay, so discuss this. Now, Daniel, if you could give me that other slide that shows the objectives here. I need that. Okay, if I can have your attention for about 20 seconds. Okay, we're calling this a matter of perspective. Peter saw himself as, well, sometimes capable, sometimes independent, sometimes he sees himself as extremely loyal, brave, and then other times he's awash in guilt and shame, and he's a sinner, a failure, and unworthy, right? And that could be any one of us. And then, but how does God see Peter? We're going to leave this up here. God sees Peter, by the way, God sees all of us as his children. He sees them as human, as frail, as dependent. So what a contrast, right? Dependent on God to be effective. God sees Peter as empowered and emboldened by the power of the Holy Spirit, his chosen servant to lead. So God sees us in eyes that only God can see through, right? And our job is to shed ourselves of the enemy and the guilt and the shame. He wants us to see ourselves as trash. Jesus is saying, no, you guys are treasure. Okay? So as you go through your verses, think of this. And everybody got the verses? If not, holler and we'll switch it back. And then we'll come back and I'll have each table share. Oh, you got to go back. So you get the gist of it. How does God see us? And how do we see ourselves? Okay? And I want to move forward just in closing here, where it says that in Acts chapter 4, Peter and John had healed this guy that had been sick for, it was either 38 or 43 years. And he was a blind man since birth. He was a beggar at the outskirts of the city at the gate. And he's crippled. He says he was crippled from birth. And so they heal him. And then they take a lot of heat from the Pharisees and all the guys that don't want them to do anything in Jesus' name. So Peter lays into him, starts preaching. This is the same Peter that we just went through his whole life, his whole Christian life and his walk with Jesus, the ups and the downs and the vacillations and the humanness of Peter, and yet the goodness that what Jesus saw in him and wanted him to build his church. He decided to build his church through Peter. And so now fast forward. Jesus isn't on the earth anymore. He's ascended into heaven. He rose on the third day. And Peter's busy at it. And so now they're ready to arrest Peter. And they couldn't try him. They got nothing but a bunch of fraudulent testimony against Peter and John. But one thing is said. It says, when they saw the courage of Peter and John, and this is what I want you to hear, and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished, and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. And so I don't care if the devil's going to try to get me down and say, you're only these things over here. You're not brave. You're not loyal. You're a flunky. You're a sinner, a failure, and you're unworthy. You know what I want to do? I want to spend time with Jesus and trust in him because I'm unschooled. I'm an ordinary guy. And it says here that they took note. So we all have a reputation. That blog I sent out this last week talks about, I've always told our kids, hey, we create our reputations. They are what they are because we generated them, And, but if I do have an image, wouldn't that be a great image to have? That people would know that you spent time with Jesus. That's the one we're looking for. And you know what it takes to do that? It takes a little commitment, a little time in his word. I've heard this my whole life, but only more in recent years. I think I've appreciated it more. But I want to be known for having spent time with Jesus. And I believe that there's guys in this room today that maybe have never really thought too much about really yielding to God. I mean, it's just you go through the motions. I talked about that last month when Vern got done talking. It's so easy to just start going through the motions. We go to work, we get up, we do our things. Some of us go to church, some of us don't. We go snowmobiling and hunting and whatever we do. A year goes by, My kids have been married 6 years already. All of them, they all got married in 4 months of each other. But, 6 years have gone by. My grandkids, oldest one's 5 years old now. And what are we doing with what we've been given? And we need to be better receivers. And we need to be in a position to maybe redirect our life and avail ourselves to the teachings of the most powerful man that ever lived, in fact, God himself. And you can do that. The most elementary person here, the one that's the newest to any of this talk that comes out of the Bible. I've seen it happen where instantly they say, yep, it makes sense. And you know what? And I don't understand all of it, but I'm jumping in. I'm just going to ask God to help me, And if you'll exercise that simple trust, he does the rest. He makes up for the gap, the knowledge gap and the emotional gap and the spiritual. We just never will have all of that filled, but by God himself. But we got to start with that first step, right? And I know there's guys here that struggle with that. You look at your peer group and they're not into this and whatever. And there's always 100 things. But just like Peter and the Apostle Paul and anybody in the scripture that's a hero, they had to come to a point of humility and trust and say, I want to give this a try. I want to believe in you. So it starts with a step, And so get with one of your buddies and just say, hey, I need some help. Let's walk through this together. That's a good place to be. Some of you may have to change your circle of friends. That's just the way it is, because they'll hold you down. Think of 100 reasons why they want you in their little drinking club or whatever it might be. The things that may not be godly things. But I think the main thing is if you will try to begin to understand how much God has made provision for you and loves you and sacrificed his only son for you and get a glimpse of the love he has for you, only then will you start to get to a place where you can reciprocate and trust. So it's the kind of the knowledge and the receiving of his love that's the catalyst. If we'll just do that, life works out. So anyway, better let you go. Thanks for coming. Let's have a word of prayer.
Thank you for listening to this resource by Shepherd's Heart Ministries. For more resources, subscribe to our channel, like us on Facebook, or sign up for our newsletter. If you're encouraged by these resources and would like to contribute financially, visit us on our website at www.shepherdsheartmin.org. Your generosity will help us seek the lost, strengthen the found, and together shine more brightly for Jesus.